All right, that's my cue, guys. I was just waiting. I don't know if you could tell that I was just looking off the camera there for a second. Welcome. It's time for the Data Center Download Series. I don't know if you got a chance to join us for the last one we did on Hyperflex. It was a lot of fun, and it is available for you to watch again. So no excuse for not getting the information. But today we are live, at least if you're joining us live. We're live, not if you're watching this recording at some point later, but that's another subject. Today we are talking about workload optimization and getting a better look at how all this is evolving and how we can be more proactive about the visibility and about the control that we have. So I want to make sure everybody is in the right place. First of all, if you're sharing this on social media, don't forget the hashtag Data Center Download. Appreciate any sharing. If you find someone that maybe didn't know about this and you think could benefit from it, that would be fantastic. But a little bit of housekeeping. Don't forget this is a webinar. Audio is streaming over your computer. So if you're not hearing me right now, that was a lip sync joke. Please be sure and check your monitor. If you're continuing to have any kind of problems whatsoever, we have a cool, absolutely awesome WebEx producer behind the scenes. She will be watching to see if you've got any questions on technical issues not related to content but related to the presentation. You ask them there. She's going to jump all over it, make sure you're taken care of. So be sure and do that. Also, again, we are live, so this means when you join us live, you get a chance to ask questions. There are experts behind the scenes beyond the experts that we have on with us here. So please take advantage of that. That's the whole reason that we come together. What else? Man, I'm so excited. This has been interesting times. We are going to cover detail. We've got a demonstration, which is just fantastic whenever we get a chance to do that because it's more than can be shared in the 45 minutes that we're going to spend together here. But Sean is on the line with us. He is going to be doing that here toward the last bit. So I encourage you to stay on and look for that because it'll help really crystallize a lot of the information that's coming forth. My name is Rob Boyd. I'll be your host, your pilot, if you will, guiding you through all of this information. But the expert that we have on right now is Bhaskar. And Bhaskar, you've given me permission not to have to say your last name. Thank God. I appreciate that. I wonder if we could just start. Everybody can see what the agenda is on here, but from a position perspective, what you do for Cisco says you're Cisco VP of Engineering, but how do you describe that to people?
Hey, Rob. Thanks for having me here. First and foremost, hope all of you are staying safe and to the extent possible, staying home. Quickly, I lead software for Cisco's cloud and compute portfolio. What that essentially means in terms of products is Intersight, where our platform where we are giving you a whole bunch of capabilities as services. UCS, the most differentiated compute platform out there. Hyperflex, the most performant hyperconverged solution out there. Cisco Container Platform, and the Cisco Cloud Center Suite.
Wow, so there's not very much you're responsible for, it sounds like. I'm glad you were able to tell us that because I would have messed that up completely. Well, because you kind of brought this up, I wonder if we could start with this, which is obviously we're all working from home, and unless we have been deemed essential and we have to go in somewhere. I know my son is an essential worker because he does some telecom equipment repair type stuff. Everybody's got different situations. Cisco seems to be remaining very aware of this, not only from the employees, but in terms of all the customers and such that Cisco has. How would you say Cisco is responding to COVID-19?
These are truly unprecedented times, Rob. At this time, I'm really, really proud to see what Cisco is doing, the way it is caring for its customers, its partners, and the community. You probably read about Cisco committing $225 million in cash, in product, in kind, and planned giving to the global COVID response and the local COVID response. Cisco's been helping businesses support their remote workers with free access to WebEx, security technologies, discounted quick ship VDI bundles, and helping with deferred payments as well. Cisco has also been encouraging its employees to support the community, and it is just inspiring to see the breadth of contributions which are being made by my colleagues all across, whether it is making masks, whether it is making PPE equipment, in-kind contributions, helping with food banks.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of it is people also just helping with knowledge because it's difficult for I think a lot of people beyond even just Cisco, where it's like, how do I jump in and help out? You know, it's weird to feel like you're helping out when you're staying at home, but there's still a lot of things that can be done. And I think I just saw in the news, with the thing about Cisco doing the deferred payments, like 95% or something of deals that are happening and stuff like that. It's like, wait, cash flow is a real issue for many people these days. So let's switch then to the business side. I'm going to flip the slides here. What are you seeing from a business perspective right now? What's out there?
So businesses are adapting, and they've been forced to adapt pretty much overnight. The demand for services have shifted overnight. Hospitals, for instance, they've had to ramp up their telemedicine efforts. Uh, Local, state, federal governments, they've had to put programs in place. Education, all the way from primary schools to universities, has shifted online pretty much overnight. There has been a surge in online orders, at least for some restaurants, and pretty much a lot of grocery stores. Right now, if you essentially get a delivery slot on Instacart, it's like winning a jackpot.
No
Uh,
kidding. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you probably saw the action with respect to mortgage refinancing, where the number of applications which need to be handled have shot up. And stay at home is not necessarily work from home. Case in point, online gaming is soaring. Both the games for adults, the games for kids. In my case, I didn't even know about something called Roblox and Adopt Me a month ago. And now every day to keep my daughter off it or limit her hours on it.
You're fighting her for the controllers now. Yeah.
Absolutely. The one aspect which is common to all these sectors is it finally comes down to access to applications. Access to those applications for your customers, for your employees, for the operations. Applications are the business. And if we can ensure access to applications, then you're ensuring business continuity for the most part.
Well, and I'm curious with that then. For me, it was Animal Crossing, by the way, so I didn't know if I was waiting to see what game you were going to say that has caught your attention. But we'll talk about that later beyond Fortnite. But what's top of mind for our customers in this time?
Again, the nature of the services they have had to provide have shifted and shifted pretty fast. Companies, for instance, they used to provision for 10 to 25% of their employees using VPN, video conferencing services, remote desktops. And they've had to go from there to pretty much all their employees accessing the applications remotely, right? Businesses are dealing with uncertainty and there is a little bit of anxiety. The logistics has been pretty challenging as well. Therefore, they are in this unique situation where they have this need to scale, but they need to scale while bringing out the most out of their existing infrastructure. They have to do this overnight, which makes it extremely challenging. Many of these projects used to be 3 months, 6 months kind of projects, and now they have to do it over the weekend.
Well, and this question might fit right in exactly with what you're saying as far as the timelines suddenly are so different. It's not that certain things are that difficult, but suddenly the timelines and the expectations were just like a flipping a switch in terms of expectations, not necessarily in terms of providing the service. I'm curious in terms of if you could shed a little more light on why is it difficult to adapt? And then because obviously I think that'd be a good setup for how we're going to speak to the rest of this topic today.
The way I see it, Rob, the only thing which is constant in life is change. Every setup, every element starts off very simple, but then as businesses evolve, as technologies evolve and they grow, a whole bunch of things come together. Suddenly you add a big data cluster, you add a machine learning stack, you add a new build system, you add a new CI system, you suddenly start using a service from the public cloud, you suddenly start connecting your stores with a new kind of VPN technology. If you are in the kind of business where you were taking orders from consumers, at one point you were taking orders from the store. Then people started placing orders through the phone. Then orders went online. Then tablets came in. Your mobile came in, and you had to develop apps for iOS and Android. Now you can order your pizza through an Alexa, through a Siri, through a Google Home, and you can order by a tweet. Each of this, the point is we keep adding on to more stuff. I can see my Alexa responding.
Yeah. Headphones. Yeah.
The interesting aspect about it is we always add things. A lot of things get added, but we seldom stop using something from the past. So with time, wherever you started off with, you have all these various elements playing together, and suddenly, like before you realize, you have your own favorite homegrown Hydra.
Yeah. So what you're saying is we're really not taking things away. We just keep adding more to it, which obviously increases the complexity, is it? looks like here.
Absolutely. And the point is, when you have these applications, whether it is in the data center, whether it is in your store or wherever it is, you're not just using one thing. These applications use a variety of services and a variety of infrastructure components, and they come from all over the place. And then all these have dependencies within each other, right? I mean, in terms of somebody is pulling up data from somewhere, somebody is kind of exporting stuff, somebody is using storage from somewhere. So what you see here are just a subset of the services you as a business end up using with time.
Yeah, it's one of those things I don't really like to put on one screen as a business person, because it reminds me, because this is actually, when you start looking at it, at first, yes, it seems very complex, and then you look at it and it is complex, but it's also probably a little bit shy. I think you could easily triple this in terms of anybody that's just actively using various tools.
If you're just tripling it, you're still undercounting it.
Am I being shy about it? Okay. More. All right. Well, with that, we're going to get into a little bit of how we can solve that problem. But I wanted to throw out a poll question here, and guys, you should see this pop up in the bottom of your screen. Question is: have you deployed Kubernetes? Lock in your answers now. I think I heard that on a game show once. I always wanted to say that. Lock in your answers now, and then in a few minutes, Savannah will push that out to us, and so we can kind of comment and get a feel and see how maybe we should move forward on that as well. Okay, so let's get into this then. I'll just ask it specifically. What needs to be done in this situation that you've now set up for us?
So, Rob, the way I'm going to explain this is in terms of, think about it as you want to go somewhere. If you want to go somewhere, it helps to know where you want to start with. A map definitely helps you get from one place to another. Now, a dynamic map, which basically shows you where the bottlenecks are, that helps you a lot more than a static map. Now, if you had like an automated system which will calculate the route and it will tell you how to get there, navigating the bottlenecks, that's even better. But then these bottlenecks are not stagnant. New bottlenecks arise, some bottlenecks vanish. So somebody who can kind of keep an eye and tell you when to exit off the highway and get onto the next one or move to a different street, it helps you, right? So the visibility of all the dependencies you have in your data center, that's the static map. The state at which, how they are behaving, right? That gives you that element of dynamism. Now, the analysis of constraints across all of these and the automated actions you can take along with that gives you that dynamic nature. And the best part is if you have the system which can automatically perform that actions, that is pretty much the close you can get to like a self-driving, and it can save you a whole bunch of time, money, and give you a lot of peace when you get to an end place.
Gotcha. Well, with that, I mean, obviously, so we've got what's the core of our discussion from a technology perspective on the screen, CWOM, as we call it, Cisco Workload Optimization Manager. Set this up. How does this then begin to do what you're kind of promising with what I was thinking of as I use Waze. I think Google Maps and Apple does their thing and this kind of stuff, and I now fully depend. I have no idea how to get around even close to my home because these type of things provide so much value, at least that from an analogy perspective. But how does it work here for the stuff we care about from business and for our applications?
So Cisco Workload Optimizer, or CWOM as we call it, it gives you that smooth journey. The thing which is challenging about the data center or the cloud is you don't have a map to start with, because these things got added over time. Sometimes the dependencies themselves are not very clear. So with CWOM, what you get is the map of your IT assets, whether they are in the data center, whether they are in the public cloud, what the dependencies are and their state. Now, the machine intelligence which we have built into the platform, that gives you the recommended actions you need to take so that you can assure application for performance. And you want to do it without sacrificing efficiency or compliance requirements. So if you can do this all in an automated way, my self-driving reference, that's essentially what CWOM gives you.
All right. Oh,
it gives to you for your applications, pretty much. Yep.
I went the wrong way. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I clicked on. I was trying to see because my screen had shrunk up, and I saw the answers were coming in from the Kubernetes question. Interesting though that predominantly in this audience, a lot of you didn't answer. So thanks for participating. 68% of you, you know who you are. But for those who did, thank you very much. You've not deployed it. So proactive on answering the survey, but not doing too much from a Kubernetes perspective. Well, Sean will be taking some of that into account here shortly, I'm sure. So anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bhaskar.
No, I think the next part is, CWOM helps to empower the IT teams, right? The comprehensive visibility now gives you a way to quickly focus on your hotspots than to spend a lot of time on troubleshooting. So the sooner you can get to the problem, the sooner you can address it. You can pretty much work with the lines of business with the same data sets. So you're not using different tools. You can basically look at the same data. So ensuring, at the end of the day, ensuring application performance is the goal. And we want to pretty much get there with an optimized cost structure, and CWOM helps you do that.
Gotcha. Okay. Oh, look, we have another polling question. So this is your chance to redeem yourselves, those of you who didn't answer the last time. Let's see if we can get a higher percentage. It was 68% didn't answer, so not that we're watching. Which public clouds are you using? This is simple. Everybody can participate in this one, so I expect to see high results. We'll push those out in just a moment. But as we finish this up, I have to reactivate the screen there when they do that. So on this one, what about cloud environments there, I guess, pertaining to the polling question, Bhaskar?
So the cloud environments, they bring their own constraints. We all went from custom tailored clothes to t-shirt sizes, standard t-shirt sizes. So the cloud kind of gives you that. There are fixed VM sizes and there are new VM types which are being introduced all day long. You can get cost savings with the reserved instances. So it's not exactly, it's not just about a VM, but whether a VM is a reserved instance or it's a general instance, and you can save a lot of money. So what CWOM helps you with, it measures your usage, and with time, it gives you the recommendations. It gives you the recommendations whether it is adjusting to the right VM template. It has the knowledge of which cloud provider is offering which VM templates so that you can size it right. You might want to increase the size for the performance. You might want to use a different type so that you can save dollars. Or for instance, it would give you recommendations in terms of how many reserve instances to buy, because you are using a certain amount of capacity anyway and might as well save money by planning for it. So the interesting part about CWOM is it has tailored these recommendations to the cloud provider and the constraints which are imposed on you by the cloud provider.
Yeah. Okay. So here, and this is your chance, because we're going to be going to Sean for a demonstration in just a moment. So this is your chance to set some expectations that Sean, so you get to make the promises, and then Sean will have to actually deliver on them in his demonstration. But with that in mind, Bhaskar, what can we expect if we're using CWOM?
You get a map of your environment. It's a dynamic map. It is overlaid with with the constraints, the state of the system. It gives you the recommended actions, and then the map can also be customized for specific applications. So not every application is the same. Some are more business critical than the others. So you might want to pivot a view on the dependencies of a specific application. So CWOM helps you do that. So a combination of the dependency map, the machine intelligence, which gives you the recommendations by considering the state of the system, it gives you a very, very, very simple way of acting on it.
That's a big piece, actually, with all that complexity you're talking about. Sorry, did I cut you off, though? What else were you going to say there?
While you want to assure application performance, the difficulty here is you have to take care of performance. You need to consider efficiency. You need to consider compliance. Getting the right balance between all of these is actually a very, very hard problem, and people tend to do it with a lot of custom tools. What CWOM does is it has standardized it. It basically brings it, irrespective of the kind of application or the service you're doing it. It gives it to you in an easily consumable way, and it kind of gives it so that you can take your actions pretty fast. You can put the time saved to good use by innovating in the parts of the business where you're needed the most. Actually, one of our customers said it best. There's a transformation happening, and where IT is moving from being a cost center to a business partner. With CWOM, the IT is actually helping businesses save money because you're optimizing your infrastructure.
Well, I know we used this in the title of this webinar, but it did strike me that, especially after Sean personally walked me through some of the capabilities, because it quickly realized that there's no way to show everything that can be done here, but that we are talking about the difference in finding out something needs work because it broke and users complained, which is kind of the model I'm historically used to, which is how I find out how things are working, because no news is good news kind of thing. Whereas this says, hey, things have the potential to break because of overutilization or something's building or anything like that. And then the confidence that kind of thing can give you in terms of just saying, yeah, I got this. I know what's going on in my operation. That's kind of the feeling I was left with this. And that seems to be kind of what you're promising here, if I was to pull back on it.
Absolutely, Rob. The point is, as the bottlenecks build up in different parts of the system, CWOM alerts you proactively. It basically tells you whether the bottleneck is getting worrisome or it is extremely critical so that you can take actions upfront. The best way to internalize all of this is by asking Sean here to take us on a test drive.
Sean, you feel up for it? I think why don't we go and throw the ball over to Sean, let him share his screen, and then I'll tell you, I'm sure Sean will take this into account. Interesting. You guys answered a few more questions. I appreciate that. Still said there's a few that haven't. But look at that. We're neck and neck. AWS just barely edging out Azure. And then Google Cloud Platform, at least for our audience. This is not scientific data whatsoever, but for our audience, coming in at 11%. Interesting, Sean. I don't know if there's anything with that and the Kubernetes lack of production targets or something. Is there anything to make of that at this point?
Yeah, it's I'd say it's about what I see pretty typically in our customer base. Maybe a little low on the Kubernetes side, a little surprising maybe on that. Yeah. But the split between Azure and AWS pretty common. It's good actually to see GCP starting to get into the mix, so we got a little more competition in there. So that's great. Yeah.
I wonder if there's a relationship there between the low number for GCP and lack of Kubernetes.
Could be, although you can get Kubernetes and Amazon Azure as well. So interesting stats, and we'll dip into that a bit as we go here.
Can I ask you one question, Sean, before we get going? I just want to make sure everybody realizes this. So your title, as we had it on a previous slide, was Technical Solutions Architect. And as I had confirmed with you, because I just think of SEs in the field. You are in the field. You work with customers on a regular basis. You specialize in Cisco's data center products. But I think it's worth calling out that you actually are constantly kind of at the pointy end of the spear, so to speak, with the reality of how customers are reacting, how customers are asking us and telling us about their needs and such like this. And so I'm really happy that we had a chance to get you on for this, because I always think that the information we get has a different set of realism kind of woven throughout your demonstration. So I'm setting you up for no room for failure. But I get but that's what you do, right? You're in the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
spend time with customers every day. I get to use CWOM quite frequently, both with customer environments themselves and doing demonstrations like this, and have really come to enjoy the product, and I love getting the chance to talk to people about it. I was gonna note you were talking about sort of the telemedicine increase of late. Just a personal note on that. My sister works at CHOP, Philadelphia Children's Hospital, in telemedicine, and for years she's been trying to get more people interested in telemedicine and try to that was her job, kind of advocate for it, and a switch flipped a couple months ago, and she's been running full tilt. Right.
And it is taking off. I think that's one of the things that's going to stay out of everything going on here. I think because I've already had to do some telemedicine, my daughter, and heck, it's preferable. I mean, there's so many things that can be a lot faster and more productive with that. And just your poor sister now is going to go through the whole thing where everybody goes, "Gosh, why didn't you tell us about this earlier?"
Right. No, she's totally already been doing that. Yeah. It's like, oh, now you want to know? Okay, good. Well, here we go.
Make this complexity more simple, if you would, Sean. Can you give us a better view?
Yeah. I love the Waze analogy that you and Bhaskar were using, and it is exactly that. It's sort of do you want to wait until you're in the traffic jam to find out what the map is to get out? No, it's too late at that point, right? You want to know before you get there to reroute around it, and that's where we're going with CWOM. So, is my Chrome window showing for everybody? I want to make sure that's coming through clear. Great. So when you first deploy CWOM, and before we get into kind of the complexity of that screen for a minute, I want to kind of go back to, I think, a slide Bhaskar was showing earlier on the sort of the overall complexity of deployments and application deployments, and the number and types of different resources that you're dealing with for a given application in the data center. You have vCenters, you have your hypervisor environments, you have your storage environments, your network, your cloud environments. You may have an APM tool like AppDynamics. All of these are rich sources of information, and that's really where CWOM starts to come into its own. When you first deploy it, you connect it to what we call targets, sources of information. The most rich sources of information are your hypervisor environments. And it's as simple as just providing a username and password and a URL for the target. And immediately CWOM starts collecting data, starts grabbing information from these rich sources of information. Another example would be if you have public cloud targets like AWS and Azure and so forth. But we also support numerous third-party storage targets. As I mentioned, we have some Kubernetes integration. We're going to be able to pull data right out of Kubernetes. The list goes on. And the beautiful thing about it is we can even get application information directly from the apps or from an APM, like I said, from AppDynamics. So essentially, those are all sources of information that CWOM can grab from and learn from and analyze. And that's exactly what it does in real time all the time. The minute you provide access to those targets, CWOM begins its process of stitching to essentially discover what depends on what in your data center from both a logical and physical level. So we have this representation over here on the left that we refer to as our supply chain. And within the supply chain, you can see the relationships starting at the logical level, all the way up at the business application level, and going all the way down to the physical, the hosts, the storage, the disk arrays, the network, and so forth. And all of the dependency relationships in between. And so in the default view, you're seeing everything, right? You're seeing this is a pretty big lab environment here, hundreds of VMs and so forth. But we can drill in. We can narrow our scope and go straight to a very specific application, which I need to find. There it is. And see just what that one specific business application, in this case, our mobile banking transfers app, right? Drill down into it. And kind of separate the wheat from the chaff in that respect, and say, okay, what am I just seeing for this application, which is built on a number of different application servers running inside different virtual machines. Those are dependent on certain hosts and storage, and we know exactly which ones they are. And so that ability to zoom in, to scope in, is really important to be able to focus on. Hey, what do I need to do for a given scenario? And that's exactly what CWOM is. It's going to tell you the actions to take to improve your environment. The actions, if you look here, for example, in our application server environment, you're going to see in this example, we're getting really rich data from AppDynamics to see beyond that kind of black box of the hypervisor. So instead of just getting hypervisor information, we're getting that plus detailed information about the JVMs running inside those VMs. In this case, CWOM can tell that you're having some issues with that application that could be helped by taking specific action, scaling up your heap for these application servers. And in this case, you've got some over allocation. You've got some resources that you're leaving on the table. So we're seeing recommendations here to scale down for some of the other VMs. Right, so you're getting the correct sizing in both cases. Instead of having to sort of wander around in the woods and guess what the right answer is. There's tons of application monitoring tools out there. I think we even have a question coming up on that at one point. Is that right, Rob? Do we have a?
Well, I know we have a question about in terms of how this worked with other tools, especially, I think about, gosh, there's so many tools, say AWS provides. There's native tools
Right.
within each of these cloud environments. We're not necessarily replicating or wasting that information, I don't think, here, yeah?
Not at all. In fact, here we've scoped in on just our public cloud targets in this environment. So I'm filtering out everything that's on-prem and seeing just what we've got deployed in AWS. And here we're making direct API calls to Amazon's public API environment and pulling in, again, that really rich telemetry and metadata that allows us to see in great detail what you're running and what would make that environment better. So we see a few hundred virtual machines, running out there. We see the relationships of those VMs to the business applications. We see the specific spend that you're currently using, but we also see what you could be doing, what you should be doing to improve that environment overall. Currently, you're dropping $25,000 a month on this environment, but if you were to take CWOM's very specific actions, you would be able to save $8,000.
I did not realize you could do that. So you're saying you're actually projecting, and then that way you can almost kind of run scenarios to say, not only how I'm optimizing, but how is it going to affect my bottom line?
Absolutely.
I assume keeping your vendor honest to a certain extent as well, because you've got kind of another source to compare what I'm getting billed at versus what I'm using, and what reality versus, where's my reality coming from? Oh, that's awesome.
Absolutely. Okay. It will even go into telling you which environments, which specific workloads are well suited for a reserved instance purchase. Reserved instances are static instances. They're basically a kind of a lease on an instance. So if you're familiar with Amazon, Azure has the same kind of concept where you have either on-demand pricing, which is you're billing by the hour, and that's a reasonably high price. But the good thing is you can turn it off when you're done, versus a reserved instance where you pay for the year. You pay up front, but you get a pretty hefty discount for doing that, for committing to that purchase, right? And then there's the game. Okay, well, which workloads benefit from a reserved instance, and which ones are better suited for an on-demand? And you want to play that game. It's one thing to do it for half a dozen VMs. It's another thing to do it for 500.
I think it's flat impossible. Yeah,
it's possible. It's impossible.
There's not spreadsheet level stuff that you can do in real time.
No, and and the real time is your point there is critical, because let's say you built the mother of all spreadsheets, and you dialed it all in just perfectly on March 1st, right? And then, it's beautiful, right? And then COVID hits, and it's all shut down.
Or March 2nd.
Or March 2nd. Yeah, exactly.
Whichever comes
right.
Yeah.
Suddenly. So you can see the very specific recommendations here. Look, you should go out and buy your T3 extra spicy and your M5 gluten free, and I think there are a few hundred of those different templates out there per vendor, right? Cloud vendor.
There's a comment/question from Michael on here talking about how he can see where this would reduce some tools, which I would assume, if that's indeed the case, obviously that's very much a positive. If you can reduce the number of places you're looking to get your handle on how something works, it's the proverbial dashboard that we've always talked about for years. But you're talking about a hybrid cloud environment. You're talking about a lot of different sources of information here. But when it comes to that reduction of tools, how does it actually? I don't know. How does it go about replacing them? Is that a fair question in this environment?
Yeah, it is a fair question, and I would say that the goal isn't necessarily to get rid of tools you have. It's not necessarily to say, you no longer need any kind of monitoring tool, or you no longer. I mean, in a perfect world, sure, that would be great. But the idea is to work with the tools you have and ideally and effectively, I think, to essentially diminish your dependency on them. I mean, I've been with customers that have bought these really fancy monitoring tools, and they generate, alerts. They get in there and they set all their thresholds, and it generates all these alerts. And I ask customers, how many of those alerts do you, on any given day? What percentage of them do you ignore? Right. Yeah. And they'll chuckle. They almost all the time. They'll kind of get a little laugh at it. And they're like, 95% of them, we kind of just, the pager just goes right past the, because there's no time. There's just too many of them. I've even been in customers where they've got all these alerts coming in, and then they've gone out and hired another company to come in to suppress those alerts. So, think of that. You pay one company to generate them, right? And then you pay another company to suppress them. And what are you left with? You get a couple of pings when there's already something broken, and it's like,
I don't know. Man. I think you're hitting on a genius business model there, Sean. Actually, so I don't want to trash that.
It's really the same company, right?
Let me ask you one final thing, because I know we could go on for a long way here, and there's just a couple of things we want to wind up if we're going to hit our 45-minute mark. But so you work in the field. You've introduced this to a lot of customers. For one, just to make sure we're clear, this is software, right? How hard is it to get up and running? If someone wanted to try this in their own environment, see their own data, is that a difficult thing to do? Do they just reach out to their local Cisco SE or TSA, whatever we call them now?
Absolutely. Yeah, piece of cake. It is CWOM is a single OVA, single VM. Oh, nice. Okay. You pull it down. We can get you a free trial going. You pull it down, deploy it in your environment, fire it up. You'll have this supply chain stitched up in a matter of maybe 15 minutes after adding the credentials to your hypervisor target and your cloud targets. And probably under an hour, you'll start seeing these specific actions popping up. In this case, we've got some examples here of virtual machine moves. You should, to help alleviate performance issues by, doing a vMotion from A to B, that kind of thing. Literally that quickly, it'll start showing up. Generally speaking, you probably want to let the environment run for 72 hours or so to just get a chance to observe, baseline, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a piece of cake to set up, and it's going to be even easier. A little teaser here in a very short while when we have a SaaS version of this coming from Intersight called Intersight Workload Optimizer. That's on its way. Okay. Although I teed you up there with a segue, I do want to touch on one thing, and that is, I'd be remiss. I promised Bhaskar I'd make sure I'd show this. We do also support, I think I mentioned it earlier, Kubernetes and container environments, both OpenShift and Pivotal Cloud Foundry. And so that same level of stitching, same level of action taking, we can do down at the container level, right? We can come in and show you very specific actions on containers. So if you think of the sprawl you have with virtual machines and hosts, you got maybe thousands or hundreds of hosts, thousands of VMs. Take that up another notch, right? When you have, take your pick, whatever your density is, 10 containers per VM, 20, whatever it is. The complexity just gets that much more involved, and CWOM, because it can see inside that container environment, get rich telemetry, it can give you the actions you need to take there as well.
That's obviously ready for the future. Yeah. Well, so Sean, we'll work on your where to place your segues, because that was good until you admitted that it was out of place.
That it was out of place. Damn.
And yeah, that's fine. No, but thank you so much. I appreciate that. I know you're getting great reactions from customers, because I was really curious what that was like in the field. And I know these kind of things establish a baseline, one of the first things I would do in this is I begin comparing it to the alerts and the information I'm getting from pre-existing tools, just to kind of compare and say, am I seeing some consistency here as you build? Because this is a tool that actually has response actions that you can take when your confidence level's at a certain stage, so that you begin handing over decisions. And this is all about not just being proactive, but also just giving you a handle on things from a more automated basis, because you've got that increased confidence with it. But excellent. Sean, thank you so much. Savannah, why don't we flip back over to the slides, and I'll bring Bhaskar back on. Bhaskar, make sure you're not muted there. Bhaskar, he kind of teed you up a little bit there with CWOM coming to a SaaS-based model. Let me switch over here. But we may have a I think we may have had another poll question. There we go. Okay, sorry, catching the slides up. So this is more of a sales-oriented question, guys, but it's highly important. Please weigh in on this. If you guys would like to go deeper with one of our experts, all you got to do is check right here. There's trials available. Take that next step. If this looks of interest to you, why not? Because you probably have more questions than maybe you're able to answer here, or you just feel like it's a question that really pertains uniquely to your environment. This is the way in which you can do that. So just check that off if you can respond to that one as well. We are not going to come back on and call anybody out and say, hey, you check such and such on this call. So I'll let that one go away. But Bhaskar, let's go back over here. So Sean kind of took away your thunder. Cisco Workload, Intersight Workload Optimizer. What is this? This is the SaaS model?
So CWOM is all about simplicity. It allows you to collect information from all these different places, and it summarizes it to that nice little widget there, which basically gives you start, stop, scale, place, configure, actions. It makes it as simple as possible. What if we could take it and make it more simpler for you to consume it? So imagine you being able to consume all the capabilities of CWOM as if it was a service. We announced the Cisco Intersight Workload Optimizer on Cisco Live Barcelona earlier this year. It is going to be available as a limited beta in the next couple of weeks, and it is going to be generally available later this quarter. Cisco Intersight Workload Optimizer gives you CWOM's capabilities on the Intersight platform. The platform you've been using to manage your compute, your hyperconverged platforms, your workflows will now also help you to optimize your IT assets. The best part is you can order CWOM now, you can use it to start getting the benefits of it, and you can switch to Cisco Intersight Workload Optimizer when it becomes available. That's as simple as it possibly gets. So I'll wish everyone a happy workload optimization.
Well, thank you, and happy workload optimization to you as well, and to you, Sean. So thank you both. Appreciate you taking the time to walk us through this. Guys, you can see on your screen now, there's a number of different resources. I think we'll have someone throwing the actual links, since you can't click on your screen, even though it appears that way for all of us. We'll throw those into the chat, one of those ways in which we can reach you. Either way, there is going to be a survey that pops up at the end. I encourage you guys to click through. It usually pops up a warning because it takes you to a different website, so it's just letting you know it's doing that, but it's all legit. Please let us know how we did, what kind of topics you'd like to see in the future. But speaking of future topics, this is a series. Remember, this is Data Center Download. Hashtag. Make sure you use the hashtag. Smarter Infrastructure Management with Cisco Intersight is coming up on May 19th. I have the pleasure of hosting that again, so hopefully that's not a problem for any of you. Hope you'll come join us. We are doing these at a time that is conducive for most of the U.S. as well as a time that works for most of Europe and Asia. So hopefully there's going to be a time that works out for you. But if for some reason you don't get it there, of course, these recordings are always made available, and they're on the site there too. And if you used your real email address when you registered for this, you'll get the reminders. All right, so we encourage you to stay tuned, join us for future Data Center Download. I'm 1 minute over. I apologize. I promised 45 minutes. But thank you so much for joining us on this series. Again, thanks to our presenters. Thank you so much for answering questions there behind the scenes. All of the nameless, faceless engineers that actually have names and faces. Appreciate you taking your time. Guys, enjoy the rest of your day. Happy workload optimization. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.